Plenty of time to dissect what a Trump versus DeSantis campaign will look like, but I wanted to pick up on the last point DeSantis made. The supermajorities Republicans now enjoy in both the Florida House and Senate. I wanted to know what that likely will mean as we prepare for the upcoming legislative session. I posed that question to Democratic State Representative Anna Eskamani from Orlando.
Well, I want listeners to clearly understand what this means for the future of our democracy. We take pride as a nation in celebrating and embracing diversity of ideas, diversity of experiences and backgrounds. That is not going to be the case in the Florida legislature when it is a supermajority in both chambers and, of course, a Republican in the governor's mansion and a more conservative court system. There will be no checks and balances. And I think what's very alarming are the powers that supermajority grants to the majority party. Not only does this mean that Republicans could cut local government revenue sources or impose unfunded mandates on local governments, but they can also pass whatever public records exemptions that they want, meaning that information can be held back from the public without any type of democratic buy-in. They can amend and pass bills on the same day by waiving the rules. And the fact that they can waive the rules opens up the door for many, many policy goals that might be counter to what the people of Florida want, including adding new bills to special session last minute, like the canceling of Reedy Creek. They could do things like that again with very little public notice. The legislature could impeach judges and cabinet officers, expel members from the legislature, increase or decrease the number of judges or even courts, override vetoes, raise taxes. These are all examples of what the Republican Party will be able to do because they're in a supermajority in both chambers. So it really does raise alarm bells. Again, just the lack of checks and balances and public input and able to help shift the direction of these policy decisions. But it's a reason why we need more Floridians to be plugged into local politics and to watch the legislature like a hawk. I'm going to do that as a member of the minority caucus and help amplify concerns, but we need everyday people to be plugged in because this is unchecked power to the extreme, and it's going to be incredibly problematic, especially when we face not just these types of concerns, but the continuation of culture wars that are not only going to be impacting marginalized people, but also access to healthcare for women. And I'm very concerned about efforts by the majority party to ban abortion in our state, which is already a goal of the governor and others. And now they have clear view to do that. And it's going to endanger a lot of people's lives.
So you're expecting, in fact, there's already been discussion of a new abortion bill in the upcoming session. I believe the incoming Senate President, Kathleen Passidomo, has said, I think she wants to take it from 15 to 12 weeks. But there are other members who probably want to go even lower than that, or perhaps to an outright ban. How do you see this playing out next session?
I see absolutely no reason why Florida Republicans will not ban abortion completely. They've already shown absolutely no remorse or regret for a 15-week ban that has no exceptions for rape, incest, or human trafficking, a ban that is forcing sexual assault survivors to leave the state, one that is forcing patients to become more sick before they're able to access life-saving care because doctors are fearful of liability. And of course, the fact that we now have some of the most extreme House members in the Senate taking charge on this issue sets a tone that there will be not only more extreme abortion restrictions, but those reminiscent of states like Texas, where there's even a vigilante system for implementation enforcement, where neighbors are incentivized to snitch on one another. It's incredibly alarming and concerning. And at the end of the day, it takes away a fundamental right for women that we should be able to decide when or when not to parent, to make decisions, whether it's to end a pregnancy or raise a child or choose adoption. Those decisions should be made between me, my family, my doctor, and my faith, and not politicians. And that's going to be the complete reversal this session. And despite the Senate president saying that she has a preference of 12 weeks, the Speaker of the House is giving no preference. And Governor DeSantis, who is running to be president in 2024, he needs to ban abortion in order to compete with President Trump. At this point, President Donald Trump, former President Trump, can speak to his Supreme Court appointments of completely unraveling Roe and leading to abortion bans around the country. If DeSantis is going to compete with that at a national scale to a conservative base, I'm sad to say that he's going to need to go after reproductive rights in order to do that. And as he ignores Florida for his own national ambitions, we will suffer as a consequence. That's why I'm going to fight like hell to protect reproductive rights. But candidly, we don't have the numbers to do that in the legislature. So things are going to get a lot worse before they get better.
Well, let me push back a little on this point. I mean, obviously, Democrats did not vote; they did stay home. But at the same time, the numbers that Governor DeSantis had in his reelection are impressive. He wins by more than 19 points, wins by more than 1.5 million votes. Maybe this is just who we are in Florida today. Maybe the policies echoed by Governor DeSantis, whether it is on the culture war issues or whether it's his policies when it came to COVID and keeping the state open, maybe that truly did resound within the body of the Florida electorate, and that's why he won re-election. And maybe you're the outlier. Maybe this is a state that is more akin to Alabama and Mississippi than what we used to think Florida was.
The same polling that helped to determine DeSantis's win is the same polling that also said majority of Floridians agree that abortion should remain safe and legal. And the fact that Governor Ron DeSantis avoided talking about abortion on the campaign trail, even pivoted away from the question on the debate stage, tells me that he knows Floridians do not support abortion bans and that he's being strategic in avoiding the conversation to the point where he can't anymore.
One of the things that Governor DeSantis did brilliantly was, in some ways, lure Democrats onto the battlefields of his choosing, at the time and place of his choosing, pick the fight, and then Democrats happily obliged on issues that many of these culture war issues, whether it was the education bill, the so-called Don't Say Gay bill, Democrats found themselves having to try to argue when DeSantis just says, I'm just against the common sense idea of we shouldn't be teaching first, second, and third graders sex education. That's something that should be left to parents, and we shouldn't be getting into all this sex talk with first graders. And most Floridians sit at home and nod and go, yeah, that makes sense to me. Did Democrats make a mistake in how they handled so many of those culture war issues in Tallahassee last session, basically handing something to DeSantis that he was able to run on, the lunacy of the left, so to speak?
So I'll counter and say that I don't think any Democrat happily has these fights or happily competes on culture wars, because candidly, culture wars are manufactured problems that distract the public from real life problems. I find my joy in focusing on issues like affordability, on housing security, on the environment, on tax policy. Like, those are the real life problems that people face. And the fact that Governor DeSantis perpetuates lies about the education system, lies about LGBTQ plus people, lies about reproductive health. I mean, obviously we have to clap back, but we shouldn't stay there. So to your point about what can Democrats do better, we shouldn't stay on that battlefield. We have to fight back and then pivot to real life issues and highlight the fact that Republicans have not addressed the property insurance crisis. That Republicans side with corporate America on every issue when it comes to economics, tax structure, or pollution, or mass incarceration. I mean, these are real life challenges that people face. And it's the corporate donors that fund the Republican Party that continue to keep poor people poor and allow these culture wars and the boogeyman scenarios to be expanded upon and exploited. And so I absolutely agree that DeSantis, he uses the bully pulpit to distract, divide, and deflect. And as Democrats, we have to clap back because marginalized people are being attacked. And, part of our values is to stand up for the little guy and make sure that every person has an equal chance to succeed and does not experience discrimination. But you can't just sit in that arena. You have to fight back and then pivot to the other issues of real life problems. We need to show up in our communities 24/7. I'm never going to raise as much money as my Republican opponents. I don't take corporate money. I don't come from wealth. I don't have hedge fund venture capitalists backing me like DeSantis does. So I'm not going to compete at that level. So I have to build trust in my community in more meaningful ways. And that means showing up every day, not just around GOTV. That means knocking on doors. That means building constituent services so that we're responsive to your needs and not falling for the culture war traps.